Markets Farm Morning Show, broadcast number 433 for Friday, June 12th. I'm Glenn Halleck. ICE futures canola contracts are steady to higher on Friday morning, getting support from Chicago soy oil, European rapeseed, and Malaysian palm oil. The July canola contract is up $1 at $468.80 per ton. The November contract is up 20 cents at $472 per ton. The Canadian Grain Commission reports producer deliveries for the week ending June 7th were about 454,000 tons. That's up 14% from the previous week. Domestic usage is up 20% at 206,000 tons. Saskatchewan reports planting progress is at 98% complete for a gain of 2 points from the previous week. The weekly crop report says topsoil moisture levels improved from 60 to 74% adequate following significant rain across much of the province. The Canadian dollar is firm at 73.74 US cents compared to Thursday's close of 73.78. The U.S. Department of Agriculture reports a private sale this morning of 120,000 tons of soybeans to unknown destinations. Delivery is for the 2020-21 marketing year. The USDA's June supply and demand report is providing little direction for the most part, with few major changes to its data from May. That could change with the department's stock report coming out at the end of the month. Rounding off prices at the Chicago Board of Trade, soybean futures are higher Friday morning. The July soybean contract is up 6 cents at $8.72 per bushel. July soy oil is up almost 0.2 of a cent at 27.68 US cents per pound. July soy meal is up $2.20 at $291.90 per hundredweight. Corn futures are higher Friday morning, with the July contract up 2 cents at $3.32 per bushel. Chicago oats are lower, with the July contract down 3 at $3.16 per bushel. Wheat futures are higher Friday morning. Chicago July is up a half cent at $5. Kansas City July is up 4.5 at $4.51.5. And Minneapolis July is up 3 at $5.16.5. That's a look at the ICE futures and the Chicago markets for Friday morning, June 12th. For Markets Farm in Winnipeg, I'm Glenn Halleck.
Spring is here, and the drive is on for savings. Get up and running today during New Holland's Spring Drive sales event from Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John. Find great deals and special savings featuring 0% financing and cashback offers on New Holland tractors, from compacts to high horsepower models and everything in between. Save on select New Holland hay tools, too. Call Butler Farm Equipment at 250-785-1800 today, because just like Spring Drive savings won't last long.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Moose Talks with your host, Doug Craig, on Moose FM.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Moose Talks. Little later on, we're going to be chatting with Lori Ackerman. Lots to talk about with different Canada Day celebrations here in Fort St. John, the RCMP detachment, the new buildings breaking ground today, as well as we're going to touch on non-profit permissive tax exemptions as well. So that coming up in just a bit. To start, though, we're going to talk a bit about guide outfitting in BC and how COVID-19 has infected that industry, which is a big industry up here in the piece. And to do so, we're going to go to Surrey, to talk to Scott Ellis of the Guide Outfitters Association of BC. Good morning, Scott. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Deb. Glad to be on the Moose.
All right. Well, why don't we start a bit for people who don't know, what exactly is guide outfitting, and what do you as the association, or as part of the association, what do you guys do?
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. So I'm the executive director of the association. So we're a nonprofit society, and we advocate for wildlife, and we advocate for the outfitting community. And outfitting really started in Telegraph Creek with the Tahltan First Nations, and continues to grow from those days in the mid 1800s to today. And outfitting is a big deal in the piece and throughout the province. And what is an outfitter? Well, basically, we have the rights to guide non-residents for big game, and many of our folks also do freshwater angling as well.
I see. Is you talk about non-residents? Is this something that residents will sometimes choose to do as well, like use a guide outfitter, or is it really kind of a non-resident thing?
Well, we're blessed in this province that most residents can get a hunting license
Hmm.
and buy a tag. Most of them over the counter, especially in the Peace, and get the opportunity to go play in your own backyard. So that's pretty cool. If you choose, for example, to go after a stone sheep and you're having some challenges and you want to use an outfitter to help you close a deal, that's where we come in. So about 93% of our clientele are international, and then so that balance at 7% is either residents that choose to use a guide or from other Canadians.
I see. So, what before we kind of talk about the industry this year, why don't we give kind of a medium of comparison here? What does a normal year look like for guide outfitting in BC? You know, jobs, money, kind of revenue, how many licenses are sold, that sort of thing. What does a normal year generally look like in terms of that?
Yeah, you bet. So this year's not normal. So I'm not sure what the new normal means, but last year, for example, about 4,500 non-resident clients come to the province of British Columbia to hunt big game.
Wow.
We have about 245 outfitting businesses in the province, typically smaller family-run businesses, 3 to 5 employees typically in the Peace. Some of them are bigger because of horses and stuff. Like so, you have more guides, more wranglers, more cooks. But generally, on average, we're 3 to 5 people. Um, so in the province of BC, 2,500 jobs and about 191 million in GDP for the province.
Wow, so it's big business. You said 4,500. You help 4,500 people essentially come hunting in BC. Where are they coming from? Is it like Alaska? Is it way south, kind of in the southern United States? Is it all over, or is there a majority from one place where they're coming from?
Uh, no, it's really spread throughout.
Hmm.
So, Germans, Scandinavians like coming to British Columbia. Um, and depending on who you are as an outfitter, some target more European than American.
Hmm.
Mexico for a place is starting to grow, but really the lion's share come out of the United States. And then it depends on the state, right? And so Pennsylvania and Texas tend to have more of a hunting culture and more of a traveling hunter, and those are the folks that dream about coming to BC to see supernatural British Columbia, to see what we have to offer.
Does that number include Canadians who are not from BC, or is that sort of a separate thing? They can go hunting on their own if they like in BC.
Yeah, so the 4,500 number is the number of guided clients, right?
Yeah.
So again, if you're a non-resident and you want to hunt big game, then you need to use an outfitter.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so would potentially include Canadians. Is that? Do you know how many that would include then?
So I don't have a calculator in front of me,
Yeah,
but you
sure.
get 93% American of 4,500. So
Wow.
by and large, you got a couple hundred Canadians, I would say.
I see. Okay, so it's a very small part of the business, essentially. Okay, then given those numbers, I mean, how are things looking so far this year? Given we've been kind of in social distancing, physical distancing, pandemic mode since the end of March. Uh, you know, maybe not a lot has happened yet in terms of hunting season so far, but how are things looking so far, given that there's kind of been COVID-19 that's maybe made it much more difficult for uh, guide outfitters to operate?
No, so very difficult, to be quite honest, right?
Yeah.
And so with that high percentage that um, our international clients, we really are in a tough place. And the spring season isn't that big in the Peace.
Hmm.
on the coast and, around Prince George and in other places, we do have a spring season. Um, that happens to be actually the number one tag per se. So that's black bears. So 2,200 black bear clients did not come to the province this year. So that's a big blow. That's 45%. And for the piece specifically, we get started in August for sheep,
Mm-hmm.
and we really need a planned gradual reopening or some kind of pilot where low risk clients could come across, no impact to communities, and be able to self quarantine while they're hunting or fishing or doing what they want to do in the backcountry. So, we think we can deliver that model. We've put best practices forward, to the government, but it's safety first, right? And so we want to make sure that at least when we're thinking about a gradual reopening, that maybe not only us, but there's others that would be able to meet those kind of self quarantine rules and do it safely. We think we're in that first group that might be tested or might be a pilot for that.
Absolutely. I mean, especially since it's all outdoors, you'd think it'd be far easier for your industry to practice social distancing measures and that sort of thing. So the biggest hindrance to this, then, you would say, I mean, it's the borders. The border has to be open so that you can invite clients from the United States, from Scandinavia, Germany, as you said, who are the biggest chunk of clients using guide outfitters in BC.
Yeah, and we don't want them wide open. I think that would be a little bit reckless right now. I think that everyone can see the numbers in the different places, but
Mm-hmm.
um, sooner or later, I think there needs to be a plan. And we think that that our group is um, in that first cohort or that first group that could be tested, could help the provincial health officer, could help the federal government in designing the right kind of protocols, the right kind of environment where they're by design. You're hunting in isolation anyways,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're not like an NHL hockey team that's going to overtake a hotel and have 50 people together. That that's not our model, right? We're horseback in the mountains. Unless there's COVID transmission between the sheep and the hunter, yeah, I think we can do that pretty safely. And health and safety is what we do with our clients, anyways, all the time, right? We're in the mountains. We're making sure that it's a quality experience, and COVID, it's new, right? It's a pandemic, and a lot of people are worried about it, and rightly so. But we deal with this kind of stuff, health and safety of our clients, and deliver a great expedition. That's what we do. It's what we deliver, and we do it all the time. And we think that we're one of the groups that could do it today.
Mm-hmm. One of the buzzwords gets thrown around a lot to describe the pandemic and the times we live in as unprecedented. Uh, we've had tough seasons in BC recently, right? There was a horrible record-breaking fire season just a few years ago. Did that have any impact on guide outfitting? Like, has the industry seen sort of bad years because of natural kind of phenomenon like this before? And is this just that times, tenfold? Or is stuff like that had an impact before in the way that this is?
Yeah, there has been. If you think about the economic crash in 2008, you
Mm-hmm.
think about the wildfires in 2017 and 2018. And in those particular places, right, Telegraph Creek got hit really hard. Some areas out, in Dees Lake, depending on which year you had the Elephant Fire, you had fires in the Chilcotin, you had fires in the Kootenays. Um, but by and large, outfitters are pretty entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
They know their way around the backcountry, and typically the guide areas are big enough that you can work through those polygons or those closures or whatever around those fires. And most of them were earlier in the season. So while it did affect some, um, really there's been nothing in the 100 plus years that this industry's been around that's been anything like this, that really has had this, an impact to this magnitude.
Mm-hmm. When we were talking right before this interview, you had mentioned there's kind of a pilot program that you guys are working on that I assume you're hoping to work with the government on. Why don't you tell us a bit about that and what that looks like?
Yeah, and so some people think the borders are closed today, and it's only essential service, so goods go back and forth, but so do temporary foreign workers. Mm-hmm. So we have people coming in from New Zealand, for example, to meet the self-quarantine for 14 days, and then they can go to work. And they can go anywhere. That's not what we're proposing. We're proposing that there's a couple different options in what our pilot might look like. And so part of it would be, self-quarantine on a mountaintop, in a cabin, on a lake, on a river, whatever that would look like. Mm-hmm. That we think that we could deliver a safe self-quarantine model, and have that happen simultaneously while they're doing their activity. We've looked at other jurisdictions and other models. We watch Iceland really close. So on Monday, Iceland's moving to having a test for COVID within 4 days. Mm-hmm. Pay for a test at the border, €290. Or self-quarantine. And so, I'm not an expert on testing, but I understand that it's getting less expensive and more effective. A lot of Americans, if they so choose, they can go and get tested. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who's been tested twice. Those type of tests haven't really been available to that extent here in BC or in Canada. And I think that I know that there's some risks around, or some false positives or false negatives, however you look at that. But I think that in the end of the day, we want to make sure that if we self-isolate, that's better. If it's a test, that's better. If we do all the steps that the provincial health officer wants, then those are things that really will help our local rural communities, so the people in the Peace, the people in Fort St. John, but also smaller communities, whether that be Hudson Hope or 101, right? They are comfortable that we have people coming in that will be safe. And then our First Nations friends that either are working in this industry or potentially are more susceptible to something like COVID-19 are comfortable that all the precautions are in place and there really is no risk to them.
Absolutely. All right, Mike, we'll have to leave it there for now, but thank you for taking some time to talk to us today about this big industry in BC and in the Peace.
Thank you, and have a great day, and take care.
Absolutely. All right, we'll be right back on Moose Talks with more after this.
We're bringing you back to the good old days with Movie in a Parking Lot, presented by Fort St. John Co-op, Nappet Industries, and VE Brandel. June 26th and 27th at the North Peace Arena parking lot. We'll be featuring Deadpool on June 26th, the Lego Movie on June 27th. Thanks to the City of Fort St. John, we have added 2 more dates, June 30th and July 1st. We'll be featuring The Mask on June 30th and Dr. Seuss's Horton Hears a Who on July 1st. Tickets are free, but you must reserve your ticket at energetictickets.ca. You only need 1 ticket per vehicle. Movie in a Parking Lot is presented by Fort St. John Co-op, Nappet Industries, and VE Brandel, and sponsored in part by Burger King, Home Hardware, Kalmar Construction Limited, Backcountry, and Windsor Plywood.
Over the past 2 decades, Arctech Welding and Machining has evolved from welding and machining to Northern BC's go-to for custom steel and fabrication services. No matter the project, big or small, we offer structural steel fabrication with our 8-axis Wortmann beam line, a computerized plasma torch, accommodating plates up to 8 by 24 feet. Our fleet of portable welding trucks come to you. Plus, we offer repairs, sandblasting, painting, and more. Check out our latest projects and start planning yours at arctech-welding.com.
I know lots of kids say their grandmas make the best homemade food, but my grandma is so good she has her own kitchen. Mary Jane's Kitchen and Catering. She makes everything herself and it's so good, especially her spaghetti and lasagna. She even makes sandwiches for a bunch of places. I can't remember them all though, I'm only 9.
Find Mary Jane's delicious sandwiches at Petro-Canada Truck Stop, Chevron, Kelly's Convenience Store, Husky, and V&M by the high school. Mary Jane's Kitchen and Catering, also on Facebook.
Now in its second generation of energetic and skilled tradesmen, Farrell Construction has over 30 years of experience in the Peace region as a well-established custom home builder and general contractor. Known for their amazing customer service, the Farrell Construction family looks forward to helping your family with your next home project. Farrell Construction, locally owned and family run in Fort St. John. To learn more about the services they offer, visit farrellconstruction.ca.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca.
Welcome back to Moose Talks. I'm joined now by the mayor of Fort St. John, Lori Ackerman. How's it going today, Lori?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for making some time to talk to us today. I know it's a busy day for you. So we got a lot to talk about, but I thought we'd start with this. Obviously, council and the city's been looking at alternative plans for Canada Day basically since the pandemic started, because there were so many unknowns. How long would it take? What's the world going to look like? Will people be able to gather? So you've had to make changes to Canada Day, including with the parade. When did it become clear that a normal parade wouldn't be feasible given the climate of social distancing and kind of public health restrictions that are still on us?
Well, I think the actual reality was back in March, April, when the restrictions on gatherings were put in place. And honestly, we have had to make arrangements for literally everything that we are doing. And I know that everyone in the community is right along with us, whoever they work for, whatever kind of activities they enjoy, they have all been tempered by the public health officer's orders. And to be honest, that's why British Columbia is doing as well as it is because of those orders that were put in place.
Absolutely. Now we're going to get to what you're doing in lieu of the normal parade in a moment, but I thought we'd touch on this. There was a protest last Friday, a peaceful protest, kind of in alignment, sort of solidarity with the Black Lives Matter protests going on throughout the United States, still to this day, due to the death of George Floyd and sort of systemic racism in the United States and Canada. People have been expressing anger and confusion on social media around town about what seems to be a conflict between we can't have a parade, but the protest went ahead as well. Can you tell us what's the difference between the two and why we can't have a parade, but the protest was sort of allowed to happen without incident?
Sure. Okay. So if you were going to ask me, the protests are allowed. The provincial health officer has made some recommendations on how protests are allowed. And the reality is if it's a peaceful protest, everyone has that right to protest. And so the city doesn't have any kind of restrictions against peaceful protests. Mm-hmm. We have never stepped in and done anything when there has been a peaceful protest. The simple reality is that Canada Day has always been driven by the city of Fort St. John. We've had numerous volunteer organizations that have always stepped up to the plate and really helped us put on a fabulous day. And the city is unable to disregard the public health orders and do what we would normally do as much as we would love to. We just simply cannot. And so our staff have once again pulled out all the stops and did a whole bunch of digging for ideas on what we can do, and we are going to be focusing on the whole week, right from June 25th to July 1st, and a variety of activities.
Okay. One of those is a reverse parade, which is, it sounds like it's a kind of a simple concept, but why don't you tell us, kind of explain to us what that is and how that'll be going down on the 27th?
Sure. So a reverse parade is very similar to how the Pride Parade happened last week. And it is simply the parade is driving around the community rather than people going and gathering for the parade. So the parade really comes to you instead of you going to the parade. That's a short explanation.
Yeah, and it allows everyone to stay socially distanced because we're not all trying to gather in downtown Fort St. John to watch it, I guess. So, a way to do it without breaking the rules, essentially.
Yeah, and so there will be a map posted on our recreation page,
Hmm.
um, showing what the parade route will be. So people will be able to gather and appropriately social distance for that.
Okay. Moving on, Council recently approved a plan that would essentially, as I understand it, begin to roll back tax exemptions for nonprofits, which, again, as I understand, they have to sort of apply for kind of year after year. Can you explain to us why Council is doing that? What was the kind of onus for deciding that it was time to kind of expect local nonprofits to pay their municipal taxes, essentially?
Sure. So let me begin by saying that this one policy is part of a suite of policies,
Hmm.
and the graphic shows the gears because that's exactly what it is. These policies work together. Their entire financial policy suite, and the permissive tax exemption policy is embedded in this. So you have to remember that there's two different kinds of tax exemptions. One of them is a mandatory tax exemption according to legislation where we must provide the sanctuary of the churches um, with a tax exemption.
Hmm.
The other one is the permissive tax exemption, and that is the one that is the controversy right now. So the council has the authority to either agree to tax exemptions or to not agree to them. And what's happened over the years is our tax exemptions have crept up. So if I was giving you a tax exemption on your property, right, you don't have to pay it. The services for that property don't disappear.
Hmm.
You still want fire protection. You still want our CMP to show up if there's an issue. You still want the ability to have the water and sewer connected to that property. You still want the road clearing. You still want, all of the amenities that go along with ensuring that we have a safe and livable community. So what happens is your taxes come off of your property and get spread onto everybody else. So what the intent of the grants and aids and the permissive tax exemption was to get our nonprofits up and on their feet. It was to
Hmm.
be a 3-year program until they were self-sufficient, and then somewhere over that time that seemed to have gotten lost, and it's an expectation now. So we acknowledge and we recognize that we have nonprofit organizations who struggle with the cost of doing business here. So last week, one admin report came out, and a story was created on that one admin report. What our staff cannot speak to is the community foundation because we have not made decisions on the community foundation.
Hmm.
So while we created this financial framework, it's parallel with the community foundation that we've been working on. We negotiated non-tax revenue from the Site C project for 70 years, 70 years. And those, over the extent of that 70 years, we will get about $58 million. And
Hmm.
council has committed to putting that into, and I have to say, a future council could decide to, shift gears on that. It's an annual contribution. We have chosen to initiate a community foundation with that money.
I see.
So when the community foundation is operational, those nonprofit organizations will be able to apply to the community foundation for the amount of their taxes, and then they can pay the city. We will fund that community foundation, the money that's in our operational budget right now for those, and eventually wean them off of us, off of our operational budget.
I see. Is the hope then that the foundation will be up and running sort of in time for when the kind of exemptions start to kind of roll off. I believe it's starting next year is kind of the first time it's going to be happening. Are you hoping the foundation will be up and running so that those nonprofits can start to apply and maybe not see less revenue, I guess you could sort of put it, kind of a hit to their bottom line in a sense?
Right. So actually, in 2021, the only thing that the city is saying is that we will not pay for 50% of the non-municipal taxes. So if you were to look at your, let me just grab it here. I've got my tax notice here. So if you were to look at your tax notice, and look at the non-municipal part. And so there's the regional district taxes are there. So if you live in the city, you pay regional district taxes. And if you live outside of the city, the only thing you contribute to might be the pool, but then you would be part owner of the pool, and that money goes to the regional district anyways. So there are hospital taxes, school taxes, or sorry, not hospital taxes, school taxes, and regional district taxes, and those nonprofits can go to the regional district to request a tax exemption on that.
Okay, that makes sense. Lastly, want to get to this quick as well. The groundbreaking on the new RCMP detachment building is today, and notably, most of the tenders were awarded to local companies. As I understand, it's not council's desire to just award to local companies. There has to be the bids that make sense, lowest bids, that sort of thing. How important, though, and how good is it, do you think, that it worked out that most of the tenders ended up going to local companies and that it'll be local people building this detachment for us?
I don't think there's a word in the English language that really does encompass how we feel about our local contractors being able to be a part of this. And we have been saying for a long time that we are not allowed to just give away these contracts to local companies. There are processes that must be that we must abide by, and so to have our local companies really get engaged at the get-go and submit qualifying bids is very heartwarming.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear it. All right, Mayor Ackerman, thank you so much for doing this today and taking some time to talk to us.
Thanks. You have a great weekend.
You too. We'll be right back with more right here on Moose Talks.
When it comes to iPhones, most people think you can't replace a battery, but Micro Consulting can. If you need a new battery, see the crew at Micro Consulting, because battery life is important. It's how you stay connected, take care of business, and keep in touch with the ladies. See, they just don't stop calling. Hello there. Oh, hi Mom. Also, remember to update your contacts.
For new batteries, screen replacements, parts and more, see Micro Consulting Sales and Service, keeping you connected on 100th Street and on Facebook.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to get to the next level in growth? Or have you been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic? Are you looking for the necessary guidance to grow or get you back up and running? Lakeview Credit Union has made a commitment to work with businesses on a one-on-one basis to provide flexible solutions to your challenges. I'm Russ Beerling, the Business Development Officer with Lakeview Credit Union. Give me a call and let's see what we can do for you. 778-256-2337. We've been proudly serving the Peace Region for over 75 years, and as always, we're here to help.
If you're looking for hassle-free internet services, call the Peace Region Internet Society today. With coverage throughout most of the Peace, PRIS can get you connected quickly without the hassle of contracts or bundles. Visit PRIS.ca or call 1-800-768-3311 for more information.
This Sports Booster is brought to you by First Choice Towing. For all your towing needs, lockouts, boosters, tows, they do it all 24/7. Call 250-785-2271. You can count on First Choice Towing for all your towing needs.
Our community first. This is Moose Talks with Dub Craig on Moose FM.
Our thanks to our guests, Scott Ellis and Lori Ackerman, for chatting with us today. If you want some more information about what the city is going to be doing differently for Canada Week celebrations, just head on over to their website, www.fortstjohn.ca. The map of the reverse parade route is not up as of yet, but it will be up shortly, I assume. If you missed this episode, you'll be able to watch it again shortly on the Moose FM and EnergeticCity.ca Facebook pages. Moose Talks is produced by Adam Rayburn. I'm Dub Craig. Be well.
Join us next Friday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Moose Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace.
This is Moose Country.
This is Moose Country.
100.1 Moose FM.